Here we live, as Carl Sagan put it, in a pale blue dot, a planet in the far reaches of our galaxy, isolated by a sea of darkness. We have one moon, yet it remains to be not just the only planetary body in our solar system that does not spin, but from our perspective, is the only body to create a full solar eclipse. Now, is this a coincidence? Maybe. But why is it that when these coincidences, these lottery chance events happen, that they happen in the right context? Meaning the moon wasn't the same size as the sun from Pluto's perspective or any other icy body or planet or moon out there. It's only happened on Earth's moon. But there are so many other coincidences we can discuss. Is it a coincidence, for example, that nearly all civilizations have a dragon-like figure in their culture? Why do all world religions have a heavenly force come from the skies? Why not from the forest or the nearby volcanoes? Why is it that all world creation mythologies point upwards, a space we ourselves can't practically live in? Why are so many world religion prophets guided by lights or moving stars and often telepathically communicating with their gods, like Joan of Arc? Just as Jesus was whisked into the heavens, is it a coincidence that abductees also talk about being whisked into the skies? Is it random chance that despite all the aforementioned coincidences, humanity has cultural amnesia to our past, meaning we simply don't know where we come from? But what if today I could actually prove to you, without any doubt, that most of what you've been taught regarding our ancient history in academia is false? And how do you propose we do this? Well, by the same tools that made the scientific method so infallible: independent confirmation and mathematics. With the tools of Google Earth, a simple calculator, and your independent confirmation, I believe we can prove that the ancient cultures, despite the vast oceans in between them, were indeed intrinsically connected in a way that defies conventional knowledge. A connection so strong yet complex, it begs the question, was this really done by humans? Now, if you get to the end of this video, I believe that you may turn away from this, never seeing the world the same way again. Welcome to Second Earth.
From our calculations, it's very unlikely that Egyptians knew the pi value. The golden number was also a relative unit featured in pyramids and their temples. It occurs in Egyptian calculations, and so this knowledge is very unlikely.
Okay, so I want to start this off by giving guys some basic values that you guys will have to know for the math. So here is the golden ratio, here is the number pi, and here is the square root of the golden ratio. All right, guys, so before we get started in this amazing episode, I just wanted to give you guys some very basic, very important numbers regarding the Great Pyramid. So in order to analyze it mathematically, we have to know its dimensions, right? So what the old book in Egypt tells us about the Great Pyramid is, let's pretend that this is our pyramid right over here. It's probably not the best pyramid, but it's okay. We know that the height is 280 cubits. And we know that this base that runs right across the entire length of the bottom of the pyramid is 440 cubits. To show you guys, this information actually came from that documentary, The Pyramid of Revelations. I'm going to leave the link in the description. And what they're claiming is that if you have the pyramid right over here, and you were to take the two bases of the pyramid, which is 440 plus 440, and you were to divide that length by the height, they're claiming that this should equal pi. So can we confirm that? Let's take a look. So 440 plus 440 divided by 280. So the answer is 3.142 286. That's pretty darn close. It's hard to say that the dimensions of the Great Pyramid were not constructed in alignment to the number pi. But what's more interesting, which is not even mentioned by this documentary, is if you just simply take the sides, and that is, let's just take the simple sides. I mean, we calculated that the height of this side right here would have to be 356 after using the Pythagorean theorem, and we know that the base is 440 and the height is 280. So what is 356 divided by 280? Well, let's try it out. It equals 1.27143. And if you look at the charts, you'll see that that is very, 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 very close to the square root of the golden ratio. So just within a few dimensions, we have already established the numbers, the golden ratio and pi in the same construction, the same three-dimensional shape. So that's kind of a pretty amazing for a culture that supposedly didn't know mathematics, or at least mathematics to this level. Okay, so one claim that the documentary does make regarding the golden ratio number, they're basically saying that if you add all the four sides of the pyramid and you divide it by the base, that this is going to equal to some kind of golden ratio number. So let's take a look what they're talking about. So if we got our little pyramid right over here, okay, and basically what they're trying to claim is that if you were to take all this base area, right, and then you were to divide by the area of all the triangles, this would be related in some golden ratio way. So we know that the base is going to be 440 times 440, since it's just a perfect square. So let's just do that real quick. So that equals 193,600. And we know that triangle is 1/2 base times height. So basically the way that we calculate that would be 1.5 times 440, which is the base, times the height. Now remember, we're talking about the height of this triangle right over here. So that would be 356. Okay, so that equals 78320. We have to multiply that by 4 because we got 4 different sides, 4 triangles times 4. And that equals 313,280. So what is the relationship? Well, let's take the number 313,280 and let's divide it by the base. And so the base was 193,600 as we established up there. And that equals 1.6181. I mean, it's basically the golden ratio. So there you go. Okay, so one more interesting connection that I wanted to quickly show you guys regarding the Great Pyramid is that if we have this height, which is 356, and basically if we were to divide that height by half of the base, which is 220, and the half of the base is actually very important for calculating many other dimensions in this pyramid. So if we were to take 356 and divide it by 220, which is half of the base, that equals, once again, the golden ratio, 1.618. If that doesn't convince you that the Great Pyramid was built mathematically with the numbers pi and golden ratio in mind, I don't know what to tell you. I maybe go to a different episode. I don't know. Okay, so now that we have gone over the mathematical connections related to the actual construction of the Great Pyramid, maybe we should look at the mathematical connections related to the actual monuments that are spread around the world. What I find so interesting about this topic is what we're essentially doing here is we're highlighting these megalithic monumental constructions that were done throughout the world. Some of it happened seemingly overnight, as was the case for the Angkor Wat in Cambodia. Some of these monuments, like the Great Pyramid of Giza, were not explained in terms of its ability to be constructed within the time frame that it's given. Because if it was for the Great Pyramid of Giza and if it was built by Pharaoh Khufu, then it would have had to be built within 23 years, which is simply not enough time, because you're essentially talking about putting like ton blocks or 3-ton blocks stacking on top of each other, one per minute. So, and then that's if you don't even have like a time that you stop, if you're going 24 hours. So when you analyze these great monuments, it doesn't really add up how they were constructed, at least under the standard archaeological perspective. What else I find so interesting about the Great Pyramids of the world is we don't know what a pyramid is. So it just happens that the most complicated construction that we have that is plastered throughout the world also has no functionality. I mean, do you realize how insane that is? That we have something that is so complicated, that is built so complex, that is built throughout so many different points in the world, and that we do not know what it is? Do you know how crazy it is that we just discovered recently, or researchers have discovered, that the Great Pyramid of Giza and other pyramids alike have the ability to channel electromagnetic energy? I mean, isn't that what a laser does? Channel light? This is really incredible findings. It's also giving us an insight into its engineering or its possible functionality, something that we have yet to understand. But given that we really don't know any of this, is it possible that our current consensus of how we understand these structures could be wrong? And so the point I'm trying to draw out here is that there are, in my opinion, connections through these world monuments. And the fact that we don't know their functions, right? And the fact that they're being spread throughout the entire world would imply that they knew something that we don't know now. So if they knew something that we don't know now, isn't it safe to imply that whatever knowledge this was, it was globally set? That this knowledge somehow was universal throughout all of the cultures? I think it's only logical. Let's reword this. If they're building the same type of structure throughout the world, throughout different cultures, throughout different people, different colors, different everything, okay, oceans apart. And right now, with all of our modern technologies, we're not able to understand what those things were built for. Something that, to me, it tells me that there's a much more complicated history than we're admitting. And not just more complicated, a much more connected history, that these ancient people were connected in ways that we're not admitting to. So if the consensus among archaeological and scholastic circles is that these are not connected, well, first of all, that doesn't really logically make sense. Second of all, it doesn't mathematically make sense. So here I want to show you why these monuments are connected. Now, I'd like to preface this episode by saying that a lot of this information came from the documentary Pyramids of Revelations. However, there is a lot of information that did not. But if you are interested in watching this documentary, please go ahead and visit the link and support their site. Okay, so the most important connection I want to show you is this particular line that seems to align many monuments. Not all of the monuments in the world, but it just so happens that a lot of the really important monuments seem to be all aligned in a single line. So let's take a look at what I'm talking about. So if we were to start on Easter Island, right? Now, if you remember, the Easter Island was known for the Moai, those giant, monolithic structures or statues that are essentially present. They have like hundreds and hundreds of them present all around the island looking upwards. It's always been considered a mysterious site. It's considered to be one of the most isolated land masses in the world. I mean, there's not another island or major landmass for, thousands of miles. I think Chile is the closest one. If we were to start in Easter Island, right, and we were to connect Easter Island, and we were to connect that to the Nazca Lines. Now, if you remember, Nazca Lines is famous for those petroglyphs that can be seen from the skies. And let me just show you a few examples as we zoom in. Here is Nazca Lines. This is also a mysterious complex, as nobody really understands why so many of these marks was essentially etched and carved into one of the driest lands in the world. If you don't know, this desert basically gets zero precipitation. I don't think it's had rainfall. Some areas have not have rainfall for decades, if not centuries. So in the driest place in the world, we have these weird, mysterious markings that seems to line up with, of course, the Easter Island. And let's not forget that this is also within the same area of the Incan Empire. So the reason why this area is so important is if you go just north of Nazca, okay, you have this very enigmatic, what they call a chandelier, and essentially it can be seen from space. Let me see if I can rotate this real quick. There we go. So as you can see, it's very, very visible from space and from the far seas. Nobody really knows what this is. I mean, just between the area of Lake Titicaca and that strange chandelier, we essentially have this very dry region, the Nazca lines. Okay, so moving forward beyond the Nazca lines, if we continue that line will essentially go over Mali, and this is where the Dogon tribe lived. Remember how we discussed the Dogon tribe when we talked about how they knew that their ancestors came from the Sirius star system? Let's also remember that the Egyptian goddess Isis also came from the Sirius star system. So that's, to me, it's an unbelievable coincidence. So we go over the one tribe in Africa who somehow understands that there was 3 stars in the Sirius star system. We get past them, and in the same general line, I'm saying the same general line because if you were to create a 100-kilometer radius for this line could essentially be straight throughout the world and hit a lot of these monuments that I'm talking about. So here we have of course, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Okay, so now we have that line goes through Easter, Nazca, the Dogon tribe, the Great Pyramid of Giza, and if you keep going with that line, eventually it ends up hitting Angkor Wat. And I just think it's absolutely amazing that this is all connected. One way that you can draw a general radius for this line, which I attempted to do right over here, is essentially I put a boundary line where another structure in Cambodia is, a very famous structure called Priya Vihara. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, the Temple of Priya Vihara, but this temple, this line right here, essentially aligns perfectly north, okay? And this monument is just north of Angkor Wat. So if we were to take this monument and Angkor Wat as the general boundary for this line that we're gonna go throughout the world, well, let's see what happens. Here is the general boundary line with less than 100 miles of distance, and it crosses India. And then outside, okay, of the monuments I just listed, look, it also passes through Persepolis in Iran, which is a very, very famous ancient monument. Look, it's another one of those huge sites that can essentially be seen from space, you know. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And as you can see, it's well within the boundary of the line. Okay, so going beyond Persepolis, Iran, we also go through, if you can believe it, the city of Ur. Okay, the city of Ur is in Iraq. That is where they have the Great Ziggurats. The Great Ziggurats is that pyramid-like building, that pyramid-like structure in Iraq. And what's even more amazing, most people may not realize this about the city of Ur, but the city of Ur is where they found those very, very ancient Mesopotamian, around 3500 BC statues that essentially look like reptilians. They're just the snake-looking statues. Sometimes the snake-type creatures are holding actual babies, okay? And that took place in this city right here, the city of Ur, which, as we're showing, is well within that boundary line. So it goes through Iraq, it goes through the Great Pyramid of Giza, It goes through the Dogon tribe country. I haven't talked about this, okay? We're going to talk about this in the next episode, on the episode called The Dragon Line. But it also goes through an Amazonian tribe. I'm not screwing with you guys. There's an Amazonian tribe, not mentioned hardly by anybody. Very little is known about it. But you should look at their artifacts, because their artifacts looks the same as the ones that I'm finding well within this line. These are reptilians, essentially. These are reptilian artifacts. When I say reptilian, you can call them dragons. You can call them feathered serpents, Quetzalcoatl, whatever you want to call it. Something in this line has not just created megalithic monuments throughout the world, but the theme of these monuments seems that it has a dragon, a reptilian-like creature associated with the monuments or the gods itself that are associated with the monuments. Is that all? Oh my gosh, okay, we have just started. Now we have to go through the actual mathematical connections between these monuments, okay? So another astounding coincidence that I'm trying to get my head wrapped around is when we go to the Nazca lines, right? What's so amazing about the Nazca lines, it's almost the exact opposite of Angkor Wat. How do we know that's the exact opposite of Angkor Wat? Well, Google has a measurement, and Google's measurement so happens that it does not allow you to go beyond halfway points. It essentially stops you at the halfway point. So let's take this line from Nazca and see where it's, oh, see, it stops somewhere. Oh, there it is. It's stopping somewhere. It's rotating somewhere. That rotation is essentially the exact opposite side of the world. And if you look, there's Angkor Wat right there. And it's essentially rotating somewhere between Angkor Wat and Priya Vihara. So it's essentially rotating within the boundary of those lines. Okay, so that's the exact opposite side of Nazca, okay? What are the coincidences that in the exact opposite side of the world, we got Angkor Wat? I mean, I think that's unbelievable. Like, just absolutely stunning. So let's clear that line. Okay, now that we've established that. And what happens if we do the same thing, but we do it from Easter Island, okay? So where is the opposite side of Easter Island in the world? So let's point at Easter Island. So let's use the line starting at Easter Island, and let's see where this takes us. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. Oh, somewhere over here. Okay. Is there anything going on over there? Let's take a look. Now, you guys may not see it right away, but right around this area is a very famous place, okay? You guys see that circle where it's wrapping around? It's called Mohenjo-daro. There is Mohenjo-daro, and you see how it starts circling literally around a very famous site near India, Pakistan, I should say. There is Mohenjo-daro. Unbelievable, right? So it seems that these ancient monuments, let me get a really close-up view so you guys can see it. It seems that these ancient monuments are opposing each other. I mean, we have essentially monuments and sites that are in complete opposite sides of the world to each other. This is absolutely astounding, guys. Absolutely astounding. And all within that line, too. It's all within the same line, okay? So now we've established that Easter Island has the opposite side in the world called Mohenjo-daro, and that Nazca has an opposite side of the world called Angkor Wat. So we're going to clear that line, and let's take out that Mohenjo-daro line. So what I really want to start establishing is not just the connection within the single line, but I also want to establish the mathematical connection so you guys are certain that this isn't just random coincidence, okay? So since Mohenjo-daro is essentially on the opposite side of the world to Easter Island, and because Nazca is the opposite side of the world to Angkor Wat, we know that they have the exact same distance, which is around 12,350 miles, I believe. So let's take a look at the distances of the other sides, okay? So I'm gonna put this ruler right over here so you guys can get a general sense of the distance. We have the calculator right over here for calculation purposes. Okay, so the first distance I want to establish is essentially the distance between Angkor Wat and Giza, okay? If we go to Angkor Wat and we draw a line all the way to Egypt, and you can read the lengths right over here, we get exactly 4,740 miles, okay? 4,740 miles, okay? If that's Angkor Wat to Egypt. And now what I want to know is what Angkor Wat is to Nazca. Let's clear that line real quick. So we'll go to Angkor Wat right over here. Angkor Wat. And let's stretch it all the way to Nazca. Well, Angkor Wat to Nazca is essentially the opposite side of the world. So what is the opposite side of the world? How far is that? That's, if you look at the measurements, it wraps, the farthest you can get is around 12,400 miles. It's around the farthest you get. So it's safe to assume that it's 12,400 miles. Okay, halfway around, halfway world, I'll call it. So the next distance I want to find out is what is the Giza to Nazca, okay? So let's find out. Nazca lines right over here. We can do quick measurements. So we go from Nazca lines all the way to Egypt. And that is, what do we got there? 7,688 miles. So Nazca, 7,687 miles. Okay, so those are our basic measurements right now. Halfway around the world just means Nazca to Angkor Wat. Okay. So let's do some measurements here, guys. We got the distances here. We just went halfway around the world. So if I were to find out what is Nazca to Egypt, what is this measurement to the Angkor Wat to Egypt? Well, we have to take 7,687 and we divide that by 4,740 miles. It equals 1.6217. Now it's not an exact number, guys, but we're approximating close to the golden ratio, 1.618. Interesting. And I think if these measurements were a little bit more exact, for example, the Nazca Plateau is a huge complex. I don't know where to start the measurements in this huge Nazca complex. So it could be that it's exactly the golden ratio. I mean, that's a very close number to the golden ratio, you know? So what else do we got here? Well, we got Nazca to Egypt, right? And let's find out what Nazca to Egypt is, to going from Nazca all the way to Angkor Wat, halfway around the world. So what is 12,400 divided by 7,000 Nazca to Egypt? 687. That equals 1.613. Also approximating very close to the golden ratio. So you're telling me that these distant monuments, okay, that are essentially connected through a single line, okay, are not just connected geographically through a line, but are also connected mathematically through the golden ratio? The exact same ratio that we just showcased is used for the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza? Are you kidding me? That's not possible. There's something going on here, guys. Another strange connection is if you were to consider that this would be some kind of equator, okay? And you're to create essentially a North Pole out of this equator, but that North Pole ends up somewhere around here. We've actually done the measurements already, right? So if this is the North Pole, what is the distance between the North Pole and Nazca? Well, since it's halfway around the world, we'd assume there would have to be half this 12,400 miles, right? So as we get to Easter Island, sure enough, it's 6,200, which is half of 12,400. So that makes sense. So if you're to take that North Pole and you were to build, okay, a line, let's say right into Easter Island. So we'll place the line here and we'll just temporarily save that. We'll just call it line measure, that's fine. And we take that North Pole, okay, and we take another line from that North Pole and we go all the way to the Great Pyramid of Giza. Now, I don't know if you guys can see this, but what we've essentially created is a triangle. You see that triangle around the world? Okay. It so happens that this triangle matches the exact side base dimension of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Don't believe me? Let's do the measurements. So we reestablished that this is 6,200 miles. Well, what's the distance between Giza, okay, we'll just do it real quick. Giza all the way to Easter Island. That distance, it says here, is 10,050 miles, okay? So what's 10,040 miles divided by halfway around the world? 6,200 miles. Let's find out. Divided by 6,200. Once again, a very close approximate number to the golden ratio. So, as you can see, this can't just be coincident. You're not convinced yet? Don't worry, because I got a lot more interesting connections to show you guys. So if we were to go back, okay, so let's just find out what the distance is from Nazca to the Egyptian pyramids, right? So I think we already established that from Nazca to Egyptian pyramids, it says here 7,687 miles. So we don't even have to do that. We already established that. There's another pyramid just above Nazca. When I say just above, I'm talking about at least 3,000 miles above Nazca. In fact, you can actually take one of the Nazca lines, I kid you not, and use that line to get to this pyramid. And this like shocked me. This is like one of those findings that like I myself discovered, so I was very, very shocked by this. If you were to take the heading of this exact line right over here, this will lead you to another pyramid in Mexico, okay? It's a very important pyramid. It's another monumental place marker. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Take this line, put it right over here. We got about 325.2 degrees. Okay, right now it says 324.96. Take that all the way. All the way, 324.96, okay? Look at this. Teotihuacan, the exact pyramid, is about half a degree off. 325.2 degrees. Look at that. It's as if you can take a line, and I'm not 100% sure if this line was meant to point to Teotihuacan because it seems like it might be at least a half a degree off, but by at least a half a degree margin of error, there seems to be a Nazca line right over here that seems to be following the path of Teotihuacan. And why is Teotihuacan so important? Well, if you were to go to this pyramid in Mexico, which is also one of the bigger pyramids in the world, the Pyramid of the Sun. Let's go to the Pyramid of the Sun. Let's find out what is the distance between the Pyramid of the Sun and the Great Pyramid of Giza. Let's go. Let's figure this out here. We connect 7,600. It's 7,669 miles. Now, if you guys haven't gotten it yet, let me show you what's going on here. Nazca to Egypt. 7,687 miles. Okay? Teotihuacan to Egypt. 7,669 miles. Given that Nazca Plateau is at least 50-mile radius, this is well within the range of perfect exactness. These monuments, these pyramids, have the exact same distance. Nazca to Egypt and Teotihuacan to Egypt has the exact same distance. If you add this coincidence with Angkor Wat being the exact opposite side of the world to Nazca, if you add the coincidence of Mohenjo-daro being the exact opposite side to Easter Island, if you add the connection of all the golden ratios that are occurring between the distances of these monuments, I'm telling you, mathematically, this is proof that these monuments cannot have been coincidental. There is some kind of global world culture that is creating pyramids all over the world. Pyramids that we don't understand the function of. It's happening oceans apart. It's real. This is real. We need to confront our reality. We need to confront the world that we live in. We gotta stop hiding. Look, the math. The math is the key. It's telling us all. It's telling us we're all connected. We're all so innerly connected in such a beautiful, complex way that we have yet to understand. People, wake up. Wake the fuck up. And that's not even all of it. I mean, we got so much more. Look, let me show you something. Do you know that just in China, I discovered You're not gonna believe me. 17 pyramids. Just today, I discovered 17 pyramids in China. How would I, by myself, using Google Earth in a single afternoon, discover 17 pyramids? Because there was a pattern. I simply followed the pattern, and upon following this pattern, I was able to discover all these amazing monuments. So now do we just have pyramids in Cambodia? Now do we just have pyramids in Egypt and India, in the Americas? We have pyramids now in China. In fact, not just any pyramid, they have one of the biggest pyramids in the world. So maybe we should visit China. Let's take a look at what I'm talking about. So just like I just showed you that there was a Nazca line, okay, that seemed to have pointed directly to Teotihuacan by at least like 4/10 of a degree. Well, if you're to go to Nazca, right? I mean, to me, it's almost like a joke at this point. Like, I'm like, what's going on? Come on. Okay. Take this line, okay? If you take this line and just have it go through the spiral, and we get what? 350.9 degrees? Let's just go up. Let's see what happens here. Once again, I'm using Nazca almost as a guide to go across the world, okay? This is not something that anybody else was discussing in, like, let's say the Pyramids of Revelation. This is something I just discovered recently. This has to do with the 7 Qing pyramids that I discovered in China that I'm about to show you. Look at this. Look at this. Here, I'm going to show you one of the biggest Chinese pyramids. It is the biggest Chinese pyramid, probably one of the biggest pyramids in the world. Look at this. Look at this monster right over here. If we connect those lines, what do we get? 351.02 degrees. Okay? We can make this line perfect if we want. If we connect exactly how we saw it. What was it? 350.4? Look, it still hits a pyramid. Pyramids are known, but I had no idea there were 17 of them. Jesus, I mean, what the hell? So look, let's go back, take that line all the way back to Nazca lines, okay? And you see, it's as if it goes, it's as if it just goes to this line in this amazing spiral. I mean, can we get it to go to the exact center of the spiral? Is that possible? Does it matter? I don't know. Only reason why I was able to find so many pyramids in China is because when I first discovered the biggest pyramid, right? Which is this one right over here. Now, this pyramid is one of the biggest pyramids in the world. It's in China, it's well recognized. I would say in the world, it's not well recognized. This is where they found that mausoleum where they had like those amazing like statues of the soldiers. I think there were like thousands and thousands of unique statues that were found underneath. If you do the measurements of this pyramid, it actually has a base that's greater than the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And I was just kind of searching around, and then suddenly I realized that there were other pyramids. So let me show you. Here is another pyramid. Okay. Here is another pyramid in China. Okay. Let's keep going. Here is another pyramid in China. Here's another one. Apparently these ones have not been marked yet. We just discovered, holy crap. Oh my God, look how many pyramids there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I did not mark these, so why don't we say 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 pyramids. Oh my goodness, 22, there's 5 of them. So we got another 5 pyramids right here, previously undiscovered. We just discovered right now as we're talking. Here's another smaller pyramid. Here is another pyramid. So the pattern is, guys, if you haven't noticed, these pyramids are lining up, guys. Look, it creates a single line. So we can just keep going, right? Here's another one. Here's another one pyramid. Here is another one. Here is, and like I said, the only reason why I found this pyramid is that I just kept following that line, and then it was, holy crap, here's another pyramid, here's another pyramid. These pyramids seem to start getting a little bit smaller as they get further away. Here is another one. You see how it's kind of small, more like a mound. It starts becoming closer and closer to a mound, but it's still within the same line. These are obvious pyramids. There's no mound to these, you know, these is as geometrical as it gets. And here are some of the last remaining pyramids that we discovered in this amazing line. So let's think about this. We have pyramids in Egypt. We have pyramids in Angkor Wat. Pyramids in damn near every continent that exists in this world, except for maybe Australia. Though Aborigines did have a rainbow serpent as one of their main gods, and remember, rainbow serpent had the same properties as a dragon. So it's not like they didn't have dragons in their culture, and we're talking about like 40,000-year-old indigenous people. So what I'm trying to say is pyramids are everywhere in the world. Anywhere that there's an advanced society, there seems to have been some kind of pyramid. It's just that we don't know what they are. We don't know what they mean. We don't know why they're everywhere in the world. Okay, so we've established that there are pyramids all over the world. We've established that there are monuments that are connected in single lines. We've established that these monuments are not just connected geographically in a single line, but that their distances have mathematical connections that seem to even mirror the actual dimensions of the Great Pyramid of Giza. So the question is, what does that mean? What does it mean that all these ancient monuments that we still, with our modern technologies today, do not understand, seem to be spread with every single advanced culture? Does this mean that some advanced culture that we don't have knowledge of may have essentially brought us into being? Did some advanced intelligence teach humanity how to go from the stages of caveman to having civilization? If you were to listen to the Dogon people, for example, the Dogon people discuss how their ancestors, these gods who came from the Sirius star system, well, they essentially endowed them with knowledge. Not just knowledge, but knowledge to 8 specific tribesmen that were then supposed to spread the information to the rest of the people. Now, this might seem strange to you, but if you read about alien abductions, it doesn't seem so strange, because in alien abduction cases, it's often very common that the aliens will create responsibilities or will give tasks or small jobs to other humans to lead the rest of the humans during the abduction cases, especially in group abductions where there are multiple people being abducted at the same time. There's always somebody who is essentially given the position to lead the other humans for the aliens. Hopi Indians have the exact same thing. The Hopi Indians believe that these ancestors endowed them with knowledge to these tribesmen that then spread their information to the rest of the tribes. Something else that's really interesting, the Hopi Indian talked about their gods being lizard-faced people. I just told you that the Aborigines had their gods that they called the rainbow serpents. The Dogon people call their gods frog-faced people. So we're seeing scaly, amphibian, reptilian-like beings that apparently came from the sky that somehow had endowed us with knowledge. Now, it's very important to separate the distinction between frog-faced and lizard people, because as we approach the next episode, talking more closely about the actual thematic connections of these, meaning who are these gods, I'm going to make the point that there are at least two species. One of them very benevolent. One of them water-bearing creatures that came here that might have helped us, that the Pope with the fish, with Jesus represented as a fish, and the Pope's hat, the fish hat, that they're essentially giving homage to this benevolent species. And then there's another one that's not so benevolent, that is the reptilians, the scaly, and I believe there are multiple reptilian species, but just in a very general division, I believe that frog-faced and lizard-faced are distinguishable creatures. That one of them came here as benevolent creatures that attempted to help us, and another one was essentially trying to deprive us from our natural goodness. And I think that plays into the idea of the devil, that plays into the idea of what Buddha himself had to face a dragon, reptilian-like creature before he became enlightened. So it's very common that humans, in the process of trying to become enlightened, seem to encounter some kind of demonic, reptilian, dragon-like creature that seems to try to convince us to not be in our good manner, essentially. That tries to convince us not to be the spiritual beings that we were essentially evolved into. But there's one other awesome coincidence that I wanted to mention, and this blew my mind because this didn't come until like halfway researching this project. As I was researching for this project, this channel called Bright Insights had the idea that there might be a location for Atlantis never before discovered. Now, Bright Insight, Jimmy from Bright Insight, believes that this location for Atlantis, for various reasons, is in Africa. Because not just being in the exact location in which it was described, which outside of being right outside of the state of Gibraltar, as it's being described, Plato also talked about certain dimensions, like that Atlantis had mountains in the north and that it fed into a sea system. And Jimmy, according to all the descriptions, believed in, completely unbeknownst to this concept in this channel, that the Atlantis would be right over here. And as you can see, it's following the exact same geometric descriptions with circles within circles within circles. But most importantly is that the actual diameter, the distance, the 22 miles that this goes across actually matches Plato's description in the distance that he gives. This, if you look at air from the air, used to feed into the ocean. You can see these tracks of water. And if you go back in time to around 12,000 years ago, there seems to have been a very discrete possibility that the Sahara Desert was actually underwater, that the coastline had actually been farther back in. And to add to this, as you guys can probably tell already, this Atlantis is well within the perimeter of that line that I told you goes around the world. You have to, I'm building here an episode trying to talk about all these ancient monuments. Jimmy on the on his channel is trying to connect this site that he believes in Africa, that he believes to be the actual place of Atlantis, and you just tell me that by random coincidence that place just happens to fall on this line? Like, what? That's not possible. Once again, the mathematical connections are not possible. The mirroring of all these monuments with the actual dimensions of the Great Pyramid of Giza, for that to be coincidence, for that to be random, it's not possible. And there's so much more that I haven't even talked about. I haven't even gotten a chance to talk to you about the Amazonian tribes over here that also have weird reptilian, like dragon-like gods that they worship. I haven't told you about the artifacts that were discovered in China that seem to depict these green reptilian looking beings that were mysterious. They call them like animal totems, but really they're just like any other of those reptilian looking statues that you see throughout the world. So as you can guess, my next episode is going to be about reptilians. It's going to be about this line. Why are reptilian presence, whether it's through monuments, through artifacts, through vases, through the religion itself, why is it that reptilians are so prevalent? Reptilians and amphibian-like creatures, like the fish-like creatures, why are they so prevalent in this line? That is a huge episode. That's a huge question. It's something that we need to consider. It's information that nobody really has connected. They don't realize that dragons are all coming from the goddamn same line. They don't realize that these monuments are all connected with dragons. These monuments are connected to each other. It could be that this line is not a dragon line. It could just be that dragons or whatever creatures tended to want to make monuments in that line, but they also made monuments there elsewhere. I mean, you got like, Teotihuacan, which is not in that line. You got the North Americas, the Hopi Indians somewhere over here, So just because you're not in that line doesn't mean you're not somehow connected with the reptilian or the dragon race or whatever this is, whatever created us, whatever connected all these pieces. It's something that we have to learn about. It's something that we need to go further in, and I really recommend anybody who is seeing these connections, who is seeing this episode, to please share this information. YouTube has been completely taking down my channel in terms of view counts, so it's up to us, man. If you guys believe in this, if you guys believe that this information is important for the betterment of our world, please spread this video for all of us to allow this information to get across, because people deserve to know this. It's just that simple. So I guess I've talked long enough. I've shown you guys Chinese pyramids, like 17 of them. I've shown you guys the connections of all the ancient monuments. I've shown you the mathematical connections. So if this isn't enough, let me know. Comment below and let me know what is enough to prove to you that this world is much more complicated than we're being told. Thank you so much for joining me in this very long but very, very important episode. This is Felipe Osorio, signing out.